Hello and welcome to another episode of the Future Hospitality Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Wells, joined today by co-host Dustin Myers. We are partners at Longitude Branding, a hospitality branding and experience design agency. At Future Hospitality, our goal is to interview the brightest minds in the industry, gathering insights, ideas, and inspiration to share with you. In today's episode, we talk with Lisa Haude, lead designer and founder of PDG Studios. Lisa is an expert in livable luxury. She's built PDG Studios into a hospitality design powerhouse with projects ranging from the Roosevelt Waldorf Astoria in New Orleans to the award-winning Portland Marriott Downtown. We'll talk with Lisa about the values that shape her team's work, ideas for finding new ways to tell old stories, and her plans for shaping the future of hospitality. Well, let's go ahead and dive in.
Lisa, thank you so much for making the time to chat with us. We're really excited about this conversation.
Great, thank you. It's great to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, we had come across some of your work, some of your interior design work, and we're just really impressed. Wanted to get to know you more, learn more about your team and your process. And so just to start out, for those who maybe aren't familiar with PDG Studios, could you give us a quick background and kind of how you got to where you are at this point?
Sure. So I started the firm 19 years ago. It'll be 20 years next September, which is kind of scary in itself to think it through, right? I started in college. I got the bug for hospitality, just, as you start studying the different disciplines in design. And I actually met my mentor in college and did an internship with her and worked for her right out of school and just fell in love with the industry. And I haven't really looked back since. Worked for a couple of different places and then finally got enough courage to kind of go out on my own and start the firm. And it's just been, steady growth since then to build the company that it is today. And I think even especially this year of all years, we've seen evolution, and I think you learn a lot over time. And as a result, now it's kind of, I feel like this year has been kind of a launching pad of just switching again a little bit. Like you change it up a little bit, and the core principles are always there of who you are and what you do, but how you are able to do it and get it out. And all of that changes a little bit. And we've all had to adjust a little to stay at home and working from home and working from a team environment that's a little bit different than what we normally would do, but it's all about adapting, and it's been a fun journey. So, so we're still here and we love it.
Yeah, I think we've all everyone in the industry and pretty much throughout the world has kind of had to adapt and adjust and pivot in a lot of different ways during this time. Over the past few months, what are some ways or changes or things you've had to adjust in your own business or just in the way that you work, as you're serving your clients and you're helping these projects go through?
Mm-hmm. So the biggest thing that's changed, obviously, is we're not necessarily going in our office space anymore. Everyone's kind of adjusted to working from home. With the stay-at-home orders, obviously we all packed up, and whatever projects you had, you brought that project box home with you, as long as, as well as your computer and your printer and all these things. So that part was a little bit different, and the fact that we weren't physically in the building anymore and able to touch, feel, see each other on a daily basis. But we quickly adapted. And I think, I'm really fortunate. I have this amazing team that adapted really well to the process. And, we were already kind of used to doing FaceTime calls and we're constantly in conversation with one another. But we just kind of rolled with it. And, we switched some of our programs around that we were using. We were already on the cloud with all of our software and everything. So that wasn't any different than what we do. We live in Houston, so we have to be able to adapt, if there's a hurricane or a power outage, so we can adjust. But, the other part was just kind of getting used to designing a little bit differently. And now, we do Teams calls for collaboration on drawings and such. And we've actually found that it's worked out even better than it was when we were in the office. Kind of funny. And then when it comes to us actually doing design selections and what have you, again, it's a lot of FaceTime and collaboration on Teams. And we've implemented a new software program that we're using for project management that I'm in love with. They jokingly say it was built for me because I'm a list person, but I'm like a person that likes to put Post-it notes all over everything. And that's, once it's done, you rip the Post-it note off. And so we jokingly say that this is, built for my brain, because I can tick off the boxes and assign things to it. And it's been great. So that's been the biggest thing. But, like I said, we've kind of rolled with the punches and kept going. A lot of our work is all over the U.S. So we're already kind of used to doing conference calls with our clients. And the other thing that we weren't necessarily doing is going to the job sites as much, because obviously we couldn't really travel as freely as we would have been. So we did a lot of FaceTime calls with contractors, which that's kind of interesting in itself at times. But I think everyone's just kind of rolled with it and just made it work. And then we haven't really skipped a beat.
That's awesome.
So, which has been awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like your team is a pretty collaborative, kind of close-knit team. And, how would you describe the type of team culture you're trying to develop at PDG? And, how has that, maybe been affected for the good or for the bad over the last few months?
If anything, it's gotten better, I would say. Again, we believe really strongly in collaboration. We feel everybody has a voice and we should use it, within everyone's able to throw ideas out on the table and we talk through it. I am notorious. I don't sleep well sometimes, so I'm notorious for searching for things in the middle of the night and then their inbox gets a little flooded in the morning. But we'll get on that call in the morning and kind of go through it as we're brainstorming concepts and ideas and all of that. And, we just, we do a lot of laughter and joy and communication. And we try to, have like a fun call once a week with the team where we do just little team building things through Zoom calls of a scavenger hunt in your house or, crazy little games that we do. It's just lots of laughter and fun and, just being ourselves. And of course we can squeeze in dark chocolate and wine every once in a while. We will, but, but I mean, I think it really is a situation where we're all just very like-minded people, right? We just love what we do. I mean, obviously there's days that are more challenging than others, sometimes with deadlines or some crazy thing that happens at the job site that you have to scramble and figure out how to fix quickly or whatever. But for the most part, I'm really fortunate. I have an amazing group of girls that I work with and we enjoy what we do and we respect one another and we just really love working together and have a lot of respect for each other. Nothing is a silly question. Nothing is a silly idea. We throw it all out on the table and brainstorm and think it through and figure it out. And everyone has their different strengths and weaknesses, and somehow it all works together and makes a great team.
Yeah, I love some of those ideas and practical ways that you develop your team. I feel like teams that are truly connected and going in the same direction, you can see that in the work that comes out. Like the laughter and joy that you mentioned. I think it's apparent when you see really good outcomes that there's a cohesive team behind that. So,
right. And I'm not going to say we're perfect because we are not. I mean, just like a family dynamic, right? You have good days and bad days, but at the end of the day, I believe core values of, and even who I am, right? And it's like, I believe that you have to live your life with grace and compassion and be authentic and honest and fair and and I treat my team the same way. The way I treat my daughter, the way I treat my friends, it's all the same. That's kind of a core value, I would say, or a foundation point to the company. And I think that comes through, just even in our day-to-day and how we work together. And, I believe in being transparent with them. When we started into the pandemic, it was scary for everybody. I mean, there is no ifs and buts about it. I think everyone kind of had a deer in a headlight moment. And I was just very honest with them, and I was transparent with them. And together I was like, we're going to figure this out, but, give us all some grace and compassion, and we'll work together and we'll get to the other side. And we have, and it's been a really interesting period of time, but if anything, I think it made us, even as a team, stronger because you're forced to work together a little bit differently than you would have before. And I think it also gives a different level of respect for everybody because, it's not like you're looking at it going, oh, the boss is so disconnected and just immediately wants to put everybody in the chopping block to save the dollars, or whatever. And that was not the case. The case was, how do we work together? How do we get to this other side? These are the facts, and this is what I'm thinking. Do you guys have any ideas or thoughts that differ from that? But this is kind of the direction I'm heading, and I've done the research, and I've spoke to the consultants and whatever it might be. And I think they, in the end, have been very responsive of that. And I think also appreciated the fact that there was transparency to it. Nothing was hidden, and, sometimes the best way to do the analogy, I guess, is when you have a child, some things you tell your child, other things you don't, but you don't sugarcoat it, right? Sometimes you don't give them every little detail, but they at least know the basics, right? And I think that there's just a different bond that comes out of that. So like I said, I'm just really thankful I have the team that I have, and they've been really great. And the same with our clients. They've been really awesome to work with during this process. So yeah, just get to the other side.
Yeah, that's awesome. So from a work perspective, what do you think, what's your mindset? What are your main goals and influences when you take on a new project? What are some of your goals and kind of methodologies behind making each project unique and standing out as PDG?
Well, I think one of the biggest takeaways is that, we believe, or I believe very strongly, that every project we do has a unique story that needs to be told. And I love everything in the design process, but one of my favorite parts of the design process is in the beginning when you're figuring it out. What is that story? I love doing the research, and I love, kind of digging deep into that location, the culture, the history of the building, or unique little things that are in that city or in that region. And then it becomes this mission of, okay, well, how do we now incorporate and create this story, and what does that look like? And then how does that come out into the design, and what are those components that go with it? So I think that it's all about details and creativity, and just, putting that all together. And I think something that you see as a consistent little nugget in all of our projects is that unique kind of boutique-y feel. Like it's very residential and homey feeling, but yet it's in a hospitality setting. And it's comfortable, and it's engaging, and it's inviting, and it makes you want to linger, and it makes you want to come back and stay. And I think that is something that, is unique for our firm, and that we do really well. And it's, and you're seeing, even if you look at some of our projects as we more and more keep getting rolled out, you're starting to see more and more of that uniqueness coming through, which again, like you said earlier, it goes back to that cohesiveness in your team. You're all working together, and putting several heads together makes all the difference in the world of coming up with a great outcome.
Yeah, that's really cool. And looking at your portfolio and the work that you've done, it's definitely apparent that you guys are really just knocking it out of the park with that boutique, like always, been lived in type of a vibe for these properties you're helping. And I'd be curious to know, like, maybe some examples of, how you've kind of integrated this approach and this methodology in a successful way for a property. And then also I'd be curious, early in your career and as you're kind of, going through, the grind of, being a new designer in a new field and, out of college or whatever, like what were some lessons that you learned the hard way to get to this point where you now have this dialed in, like, you guys are doing amazing work now, but I'm sure it took some, difficult times to get to that point.
Yeah. So lessons learned. It's so funny you say that. I think we're always learning every day, but even with my own team, we had this conversation just this week about a lesson that one of my teammates learned. I think the thing is that we're all human, and realistically, errors are going to happen. And, whether it might be a small little error that's easy to fix and easy to catch before it goes into implementation, or sometimes you don't catch it until it's been implemented and then you have to kind of figure out how to do it. But we're human. And I will tell you, if you ever make a mistake, you probably aren't going to forget the error that you made. I've had in the past, I had a designer one time completely specify the wrong size piece of art that was going into every single guest room. And it was a problem. And I can assure you, she never forgot again, ever, to double check drawings before art went in a room, because that was not an error that was ever made again. But it's things like that. Even when I was a young designer, I made errors. You have furniture that's not quite right dimension wise, or, seat height that's off, or, like I said, a piece of art that doesn't quite fit, or, and sometimes you can joke about it afterwards. And other times you're like, oh, wow, that was a really big mistake and we got to fix that. But once you've done it once, you typically don't do it again. You kind of learn from that as a lesson learned and go from there. So that's, early on, that was something I learned, and every young designer, I think, learns it. And the other part of that is, you're human and it's going to happen. And when you do make the mistake, you own up to it. You don't sugarcoat it and try to, brush underneath the covers. It's kind of like, nope, we made the error and now we got to help you figure out how to resolve the error. So there's that part of it. And I think that, when I started the firm, obviously when it first began, it was, myself as a single designer. So if there was any errors being made, it was my own darn fault. And then, like I said, as you go with time and evolve and you hire other people, there's sometimes younger staff members and things happen and things get missed or whatever. But that's part of my job too, is to mentor and to teach and to review and have safeguards in place to try to catch those types of things so they don't happen. So I guess that answers probably the one question.
Yeah. So fast forward, now to recent years, and you guys are just, you have a pretty well-oiled machine, and like you said, we're always learning, lessons every day. But what are some ways, that you've recently, in recent years, found success in telling these unique stories and solving these problems for your clients?
So I think part of it is you have to sometimes have that open mind and creativity. Probably one of the biggest things we run into is, we're creative people. So we're going to always think outside the box a little bit. And then we have to get even more creative when the budget hits and you go, oh, wait, we can't afford all these things, or that's coming in way more expensive than we thought it would be. Then we really have to get creative to figure out how do we still get that design intent that we wanted, but at an affordable rate, because not everybody has that open checkbook. And so I think, again, it just goes back to, being open to suggestions, working with your team, and your team not being just internally the PDGS team, but also incorporating the contractor and the consultants and the owner, because we're all going to bring different things to the table and different suggestions. And, we are all trying to get to the same end of the finish line. I also think too that personally, I feel like as a designer, we don't need to carry an ego with us, and we just need to be, again, open and honest and open to ideas. I, by far, am not an expert in all of these fields. And, I've learned a lot over the years just working with contractors and mill workers and cabinetry people and carpenters. And, sometimes, again, you might have this really great, fabulous idea of this intricate detail that you want above the bar. And they're like, yeah, that's not going to happen because of this, this, and this. So you have to work together to figure out how to make that happen and still get the design intent you want. And I think, again, I think that's where you just, over years, you just learn to, trust that it takes a village to build these buildings and to finish these spaces out. And, while we might be one little component of it, maybe an important component of it, so are so many others that do it as well. And together we all make that boutique feel in the end. We have the vision and all of that we have to work together to figure out how to implement. And sometimes you really have to stretch to get creative on how to make it all happen. We did a job in Hawaii, and the island it was on, I mean, the only option we had was the local Lowe's and a Costco, literally, and that was it. And so, every single piece of furniture and millwork, right down to the bar itself was built. We didn't have any local craftsmen that could build any of that. And it was difficult to, pay for some of these specialty trades to go over there and just work on site and build it on site like we normally would anywhere else. And so that particular project, we built all of it actually in LA with a fabricator, and then put it on a boat, sent it over. And then they sent one or two people over to basically assemble the kit apart, at the property. And you can already guess there's going to be its own little sets of issues and problems that go with it, because if the dimension's not quite right or the field condition's not quite what you thought it was going to be, even though you've measured it 52 times, you had to kind of adjust in the field, and you kind of had to MacGyver a few things. Again, when you only have Costco and the local Lowe's with limited stuff to work with, it became a little challenging at times. But we made it through, and it turned out to be a great property, and the millwork was beautiful when it was finished. But it definitely was one of those, it took a village to make that one happen. And, that was great. So, I mean, I think that's part of our job. We just have to learn how to adapt and adjust and be willing to, make suggestions or compromises in areas at times, because things happen, and, all different situations occur, and you adjust and go with the flow.
Yeah, for sure. As you talk about your process, there's a lot of similarities in what we do as a branding agency. Just starting with the story and figuring out what are you trying to communicate, and then starting to piece together different design ideas and solutions that are going to kind of carry that through and achieve the end goal.
Mm-hmm.
The hospitality industry and projects, there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of stakeholders, a lot of different opinions. What are some of the ways that you have, or I guess what are some good examples of times when projects all came together and the final vision came to pass in the way that you hoped? And what are some times that maybe there was conflict or disjointed visions, and kind of how did you navigate that?
Wow, that's a really great question. So disjointed, I think that comes to play if an owner or a brand, let's say, is not necessarily in alignment with the direction we're heading. And, we've had a few projects that have kind of fallen into that category. Ownership has one idea and maybe they're not being very clear in that communication to the rest of the team. So therefore you're going to have problems, right? It's not going to be a nice fluid process. And the same sometimes happens with the brand. We as in design team and ownership might be united in the direction we're heading, but maybe the brand thinks it's a little different direction, and they might be a little bit more forceful with what they're wanting and where they're going, or what they're wanting it to go in that direction or whatever. And so, there's more redesign and adjustments that happen. And I think that, again, it kind of goes back to some of the core principles that I talked about earlier. For us, I believe in listening to everybody's opinions and listening to their voice. And when it makes sense, you implement accordingly. And sometimes you have to kind of you definitely have to put your ego to the side, and you have to put your feelings sometimes aside, because it's not a personal attack on you. It truly is, you guys are just trying to work together to figure out what is that end result that we're wanting, right? And how do we get there? And I tell my team that all the time too. Like, even if I'm doing critique on a presentation they're making to me, it's like, guys, I'm not attacking you. And like, yes, maybe you love that purple polka dotted fabric, but the reality is it doesn't work for this situation, and here's why. So let's maybe go reevaluate and pick this, and this instead. And it's the same way. I think you just have to be open to those suggestions. And if there is something that you feel very strongly about, that is an integral part of the design, then, maybe I'll push a little harder on trying to get that one particular element through. But then I maybe will compromise somewhere else because it's not as important in that regard, on whatever it might be. And sometimes you just kind of have to adjust the vision a little bit as you're moving forward. But, again, I don't believe in being confrontational and ugly and mean. I'm going to sit there and listen to that person's wishes and desires, and then you just adjust accordingly. Just because I came out with, I dreamed up this idea or this vision, or my team dreamed up this vision for the property, but you're not totally sold on it, doesn't mean that we're going to keep trying to push that down your throat. We're going to listen to what you're wanting, what your thoughts are, and then we adjust accordingly. And if that means we have to redesign something, we redesign that thing. Because, we want everybody to be happy with the outcome. So that's kind of how I approach it. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know, but that's kind of how we do things. And, and I think that many times, we're really lucky and fortunate that, we've listened well enough, or we've heard, we've asked all the right questions in those preliminary meetings, that when we come into that first meeting of our concept and our mood pages, that, we've pretty much hit it out of the park, and we've gotten it what they want it to be and where it should be going. It might be a tweak here and there, but it's not, completely off base. They're like, yep, we like the vision you're going with, and this is great. And so, but again, it's a fluid process. And I think being open to suggestions and commentary is important. And that's part of the process.
Lisa, kind of shifting gears here, looking forward to the future of the industry. I know a lot of people, I'm sure you guys are just kind of wondering what the recovery will continue to look like, and how long it'll take and what it'll look like when it's all said and done. The pandemic has done a number on our industry in a lot of different ways. As it relates to what you guys do with interior design and how you guys are solving these problems, how do you foresee that the future of what you do changing? Different considerations you need to make, or different ideas that need to be presented to guests and to ownership and things like that.
Well, we definitely all have been impacted, and it's incredibly humbling and sad to see how bad we've been impacted, right? I mean, there's firms that have closed doors and companies that have closed doors that will never come back, which is really sad. And others of us that are hanging on by by our fingertips, but we're still here. I think that moving forward, it's probably going to still be a little bit of a bumpy road for a while. You're probably going to have ebbs and flows a little bit, as this virus still kind of moves around the world, and probably will until we kind of get a vaccine and normalcy, whatever you want to call normal anymore, put in place. But with that being said, people are starting to get out again and travel. I heard the other day that this past weekend was like the biggest number they'd had going through the airports since like February, in one weekend. It was like people are starting to move. People are wanting to get out and do things, and obviously within safety zones. But I think that everyone's just wanting to move on and embrace this is what life is today. And so how do we adjust and keep adapting and move forward? I think as designers, we are challenged a little bit more in the designs that we are doing now, or in the products we are specifying, in that we need to make sure people feel and understand that the product is clean and safe and not harboring germs and or holding a virus in it or whatever. So, I think the selections we're making, like fabrics, are they easy to clean? Are they bleachable? Do they have, do they hold a germ or, whatever it might be? I mean, luckily technology has moved so much further forward when it comes to fabrics that things automatically have, some sort of a sanitary side to it. It used to be just in healthcare, but it's rolled over into hospitality now, and it keeps getting better and better every single day. The same with what are the products we're using, using quartz and using natural materials and surfaces that are easy to clean, just helps reassure to the guest that's in that environment that what they're touching is not harboring germs sitting on that surface for a longer period of time, and just kind of thinking through that process a little bit. The same with, when we're laying out spaces now, everyone is socially distanced, so we're not necessarily spacing every single chair 6 feet apart, because that would be a pretty sparse little lobby. But just, being very thoughtful with how we are laying the space out, providing maybe more zones of areas or intimate seating spots, so that if you are a small little group of 2 or 4 people, it's easy for you to kind of huddle in your little area, and then you're still distanced from maybe somebody else that's in the adjacent area. So I think just kind of, working through those components is important, and something that, we just kind of keep implementing into all of our designs, and we just keep adjusting. Every day I think it changes a little bit more, and we just have to adjust accordingly. Just like schools are having to adjust, and everywhere else that we touch, feel, and see, right? Everyone's just kind of adapting to the new criteria, and eventually it'll just become normal again.
Yep, absolutely. We're all just kind of figuring it out as we go, and making adjustments. And like you said, it does seem like people are getting more comfortable moving around and resuming some normalcy. So that's really exciting.
I see that. Yeah. And I even see it with my own daughter. It's kind of funny. Kids, they go to school. Like my daughter, she wears her mask and she goes to school and all of that. And it's one of those things where she doesn't even think twice about it. She just grabs the mask, walks out the door, puts it on her face. She's good to go. We as the adults are probably kicking and screaming a little bit more about wearing the mask at times. Mm-hmm. But for them, it's normal now. Like they don't think twice about it. They just put it on and go on with their merry day, and they don't complain about it. And it just is what it is. So I think it's all about being open to adapting. And, just like if you think back, the Industrial Revolution, when it happened and all of that, there were definitely times when I'm sure those people resisted change as well. Think about it. Major changes happened when suddenly people had light bulbs and indoor plumbing and, all these other things that happened, right? And so that was a big adjustment. And we're kind of doing the same thing. This is our own version of the Industrial Revolution to some extent, and we're being forced to adapt and adjust and change to whatever the new norm is going to be. And it's scary, but it's good,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as with the title of this podcast, Future Hospitality, we always ask our last question, just what are you personally excited about as you look to the future? I know 2021 is kind of a major reset, refresh year for a lot of people, a lot of businesses. What are you excited about as you look to the future?
Well, I'm excited for a vaccine to come about and for people to not be sick all the time, right? That would be great. It's definitely it's been really sad and humbling, right, to see all that's happened in a year. I think that, I'm excited to see how hospitality is going to continue to evolve and adjust for all of this, right? And how we are going to continue to adapt with technology, and what does that look like? And how we all just kind of embrace and move forward. I don't know that we're ever who knows, maybe we're going to have a life like the Jetsons where, we have a robot named Rosie and everything is automated and all of that. Who knows?
That would be awesome.
It would be awesome, right? I could totally have a Rosie in my house right now. It would be awesome. But yeah, just, again, just when you kind of think back and reflect a little bit, even in the past 2 years, how much something has changed, right? Alexa is everywhere. Everything is automated with a smart house and all of those things. And it's all moving so fast, moving forward. And it'll be interesting to see, again, a year from now, what does that look like? So I think the future in hospitality is going to be something we probably can't even imagine right now, but I think it's going to be amazing. And I think that there are also a lot of people probably have spent this past year kind of reflecting and thinking about how to make things better than they were before, and are challenging all of us to even one-up it a little bit, right? And so, and I also think, the future is going to be us being a little bit more adaptive, and probably a little bit more, intentional with whatever decisions we're making, right? I know for me, I think when all this happened, I became a little bit more intentional with how much time I was working and when I was actually present with my daughter and what we were doing and how we were doing it. And sometimes, it didn't necessarily mean we needed to hurry up and go somewhere to go do something. Sometimes just sitting and playing a game or snuggling up and watching a movie together was so much better than what we thought would have been better, right? And I think that, I think a lot of it's going to be a lot of a reset in many ways, but I think a good reset. So I'm excited for the future. I'm excited to see how we're all going to continue to evolve and grow and, what's going to happen next. And I think we're all a little anxious to be able to travel freely amongst the world again. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing with us. We love your mindset, your approach to projects, and the results are obviously beautiful and excellent. How can people learn more about PDG and stay in touch with you?
Well, you can certainly follow us on social media. Our handle is PDG Studios _IG. So that's a great way to find us. And we have stuff posting every day and links to blogs and all sorts of fun things. And of course, you can certainly go visit us on our website and connect to us that way. And we would love to hear from you. and that is www.pdg-studios.com. And, it would just be great, just to work alongside others and keep moving forward.
All right, Lisa, thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, guys.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Future Hospitality Podcast. If you enjoyed today's topic and episode, please leave us a review. You can also find us on Instagram at Future Hospitality and on Facebook by searching for Future Hospitality.